Just a reminder that the first Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival what was I going to say? Entries are open now. And until December 1st, you can make a movie. Shouldn't you? Haven't you always wanted to? Well, now there's a place that'll play it. So make a movie. Send it in. We'll play it here. It'll be fun. That was a terrible, terrible, terrible introduction. You all know what the film festival is. I've got to do better. I've already been on the internet for, 5 hours? Let's do another 2. Shall we? Well, greetings, Imagination Connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your Master of Fun and Wonder, your Viceroy of Verisimilitude, your Sommelier of Cinema, your Archbishop of Banterbury, your Chancellor of Cheerfulness, your Pharaoh of Physical Media, and, of course, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, Robert Meyer Burnett. Once again, I am robcasting at you. Boy, I didn't make the camera. Well, it's a little crooked. Anyway, robcasting at you, you Imagination Connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. You gentle people, gentle beings, however you identify from across these 28 known galaxies. You know, I don't take any real pleasure by saying, I told you so. And, many have called me the Oracle of Delphi of Hollywood, or just they call me the Oracle of Hollywood, because, of course, many of my box office prognostications, they come true. Didn't I say that HBO Max was going to do the Snyder Cut way back in November of last year? I did. I do feel bad about, though, today's show, because I feel that perhaps maybe in some way I contributed to it. Let me just take you all through. I'm going to try and not be as gleeful about the news that happened today. Let me just take you through the events of the last 24 hours. All right. So today at 4:36 in the morning, Variety ran this story. QUIBI lands on Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Google TV, but it's probably too little, too late. QUIBI's Quick Bite originals are now streaming on 3 connected TV device platforms: Apple TV, Amazon's Fire TV, and Google TV Android TV. But there might be nothing that can save Jeffrey Katzenberg's struggling mobile subscription service startup at this point. QUIBI launched 6 months ago at the front end of the COVID pandemic, stubbornly sticking to its original vision of a built-for-mobile viewing experience as millions of people were stuck at home. Katzenberg and other QUIBI execs had insisted its content was meant to be watched on smartphones, and the company treated the living room as an afterthought. I don't want to just say, look, I have been banging around. I have done stories. I've done episodes about QUIBI since it went online. And I have said it was the dumbest idea that Hollywood's come up with in a long time. 2 reasons. One, it was made for mobile platforms. This idea that anybody wants to watch programming on the go. And 2, it was only available on your smartphone, on your Black Mirror, ladies and gentlemen. That's all it was available on. And also, QUIBI wanted to make it so you could watch content like this or like this. Well, you know what they did when they put it on Apple TV? Guess what? They only made it available horizontally, not stupidly like this. So they got in a whole rigmarole, a whole spat because they might have stolen this technology. Anyway, so they decided finally, as of, I guess, well, it'd been in process for a while, but you could get it on TV and watch your content like any normal person does who wants to concentrate on their content. You watch it on your screen at home. where you're not running around worried about where you're going, missing a connection, whatever. The dumbest way to think people want to. Why would anybody ever think? I mean, this thinking was 2007 at best. Anyway, as Variety reported in June, QUIBI was in talks to bring the service to connected TV devices as a native app, including Fire TV and Roku, in a scramble to win more subscribers. For now, the startup hasn't been able to swing a pack with Roku. The QUIBI apps for Apple TV, Fire, and Google TV, Android TV, including on the recently launched Comcast, which now includes a remote, launched on Monday, October 19th. All of the content on QUIBI's TV apps is displayed in landscape format, whereas the mobile app uses a feature called Turnstile, another monumentally stupid decision, which is the subject of ongoing litigation to toggle between vertical and landscape mode. Love our mobile app? Great news! We've taken all the awesome QUIBI content. What content would that be? I mean, I'm sure there was some good QUIBI content. I will never know because I will never see it. But awesome content and made it available for your TV, QUIBI says in an update on its customer support site. Earlier this summer, QUIBI added support for Apple's AirPlay to let users launch streams on Apple TV boxes and other compatible devices for mobile apps, and Google's Chromecast and Chromecast integrated TVs. But QUIBI, by all accounts, has missed its subscriber sign-up goals despite writing checks for big budget originals. By the way, QUIBI was making deals last week for their new programming. Katzenberg, the former movie mogul who raised $1.75 billion from studios and other investors for the venture, has cited the coronavirus pandemic for the company's disappointing results. You know what wouldn't have been disappointing, QUIBI? If you made your content available to TVs at launch. I mean, you only made them available to mobile phones. I mean, what brain trust thought this up? I mean, seriously, who thought, yes, we're going to make A-list programming with A-list Hollywood contributors and spend a hell of a lot of money on it, but you can only watch it on your phone? Who thought that was a good idea? Anyone? Bueller? I mean, you know, but QUIBI, by all accounts, had missed its subscriber sign-up goals. I wonder why, despite writing checks for big-budget originals. Katzenberg, the former movie mogul who raised $1.75 billion from studios and other investors, has cited the coronavirus pandemic for the company's disappointing results. A pandemic that forced everybody to stay home with not much else to do but watch programming. You, sir, blamed QUIBI's failure on the coronavirus pandemic because what? People couldn't run to work, so they were not, watching programming on their phones? I mean, that's the lamest excuse ever. I mean, it makes me think of a line in Real Genius. I thought of the immortal words of Socrates, who said, "I drank what?" Anyway, in reality, QUIBI faces intense competition in the subscription streaming market against heavyweights like Netflix and Disney+, and QUIBI's absence on connected TVs has obviously hurt uptake. At the same time, QUIBI is vying against a gusher of free short-form video content on Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube, and other apps. Last month, the Wall Street Journal reported that Katzenberg was exploring strategic options for QUIBI, including a potential sale. Why would anybody possibly want to buy QUIBI? Your creators own their own content. You let them make content, and then you gave it to them. The only thing QUIBI had to sell was its content, and the content all reverted back to its creators when it aired on QUIBI. So there was nothing to buy except your stupid platform, which was stupid, so nobody would buy it. The QUIBI founder pitched a sale of the company, which has about 500,000 paying customers, to Apple, Warner Media, and Facebook, but was rebuffed, the information reported, citing anonymous sources. Katzenberg, per a new report by The Information this week, also struck out in his attempt to sell QUIBI's programming rights to companies. Which rights were those? programming rights to companies including NBC, Universal, and Facebook, and now Katzenberg has told people in the industry that he may have to shut down the company, per the report, citing an anonymous source. QUIBI has commissioned original shows paying up to $100,000 per minute of programming from A-listers including Steven Spielberg, Jennifer Lopez, Sam Raimi, Idris Elba, Chrissy Teigen, Antoine Fuqua, Anna Kendrick, Rachel Brosnahan, Issa Rae, Kevin Hart, Steven Soderbergh, and the Kardashians. In September, QUIBI picked up 2 Emmys for Anton Fuqua's #FreeRaySean with Lawrence Fishburne and Jasmine Cephas Jones winning acting laurels in the short-form category. Okay, that was this morning at 4:30. The Wall Street Journal reported right before I went on this morning. This is in the Wall Street Journal. QUIBI weighs shutting down as problems mount. Now this happened when I went on, I think I was on the John Campea show when this Wall Street Journal article went up. Now, I got to tell you, people who are doing creative things, I never want those things curtailed. But you know me, I thought QUIBI was a dumb idea from the start. It was just, you know what QUIBI was? It was a shopping cart full of bad ideas that somehow I don't know how it even got out. But it was like old people trying to appeal to young people, or people that weren't at all paying attention to the very entertainment landscape they were about to enter. One day this is going to go, people are going to write a book, or many books, about what a cautionary tale the utter failure of QUIBI was on every single level. So this story, QUIBI weighs shutting down as problems mount. By the time I got off my last stream, look at how this headline changed. QUIBI is shutting down as problems mount. Literally less than 2 hours later, we went from ways shutting down as problems mount to is shutting down. I can't think. I mean, I have to say that there's been a lot of things that were taken away from us during 2020. But QUIBI, since its launch 6 months ago, I would say that it has brought me more joy in reporting on QUIBI, and this all of my faith in where QUIBI was going to go just was rewarded today with these headlines. I just look, I'm not saying I know everything about the entertainment business, but I am a student of it. I've studied the entertainment business for a very long time, most of my life. And you know, I don't want to say I know everything, but a lot of things that I think are going to come to pass have come to pass, and that's been bared out by the things I've said on this show and on Collider Heroes and John Campea show. I'm not saying I'm right all the time. I'm not. But man, did I nail it about QUIBI, or did I nail it? I mean, you know, I'm not looking for a pat on the back, but I cannot understand why I've spent my life going into rooms, pitching stories, pitching movies that I know would do well, and how somebody can go raise 1.7. I know it's Jeffrey Katzenberg and Meg Whitman. I mean, these are people that are captains of their industry. I get it, but that shouldn't have any bearing. I mean, people should know whether an idea, especially people in the entertainment business, you have to be savvy if something is good or not. And QUIBI was never, ever an idea that should have ever made it out of a boardroom, much less bilked investors for $1.75 billion. I mean, unbelievable. Let's jump into this, shall we? By the way, this was 3:36 p.m., so this is 12:36 p.m. So this was a little less than 3 hours ago. Streaming service hired a restructuring firm that recommended a range of options to the board. QUIBI Holdings LLC is shutting itself down. No, QUIBI Holdings LLC, it's not shutting itself down. People that work for the holdings are shutting down. According to people familiar with the matter, a crash landing for a once high-flying entertainment startup that raised $1.75 billion in capital. You know what? It might have been, somebody might have thought it was high-flying, but to me, that was a mistake. I think investors were actually on the plane. They were supposed to be high-flying, but actually the plane had never taken off, and they were like blowing dry ice past the windshield or the passenger windows and made it look like they were flying, because anyone who ever believed in this idea, I'm sorry. I don't know what investment company. I mean, I understand Jeffrey Katzenberg and all of that. But I mean, let's face it, even when Steven Spielberg, when they formed DreamWorks, it was Spielberg, Geffen, and Katzenberg. Come on. Who was the brain trust amongst them? I don't think it was Jeffrey Katzenberg. Anyway, I don't know Jeffrey Katzenberg. I'm probably never going to know him, because if he doesn't know who I am. He'll never know who I am. But if I met him, I'd probably say, hey, can you tell me stories when you worked on Star Trek The Motion Picture when you were at Paramount under Barry Diller? I'd love to hear those stories. Maybe I'd like to hear stories about why he thought this was a good idea. The streaming service has been plagued with problems since it launched in April. No, the streaming service has been plagued with problems since somebody thought it up. Let's have short-form content only on phones for people on the go. On Wednesday, QUIBI founder Jeffrey Katzenberg called investors to tell them he is shutting the service down. Some of the people said, how'd you like to be on that call? How would you like to be the guy who failed delivering programming during a pandemic? I mean, that was like, I don't even want to say it because I feel bad making that equivocation. But I mean, QUIBI shutdown marks a disappointing turn of events for Mr. Katzenberg, who pitched the streaming service as a revolutionary new entrant into the video streaming wars. The service served up shows in 5-minute to 10-minute chapters, formatted to fit a smartphone screen, targeting subscribers who wanted entertainment in a hurry. What subscribers are those? I want entertainment in a hurry. What entertainment would that be? The whole point of entertainment is to be entertained so you're not in a hurry. It was primarily aimed at mobile viewers. And who might those be? But the coronavirus pandemic forced would-be subscribers away from the kinds of on-the-go situations QUIBI executives envisioned for its users. But the coronavirus pandemic forced would-be subscribers away from the kinds of on-the-go situations QUIBI executives envisioned for its users. What on-the-go situations? Do you know why people watch programs on the go? They watch programs on the go because they have them to watch. It's not the most ideal way that they would watch them. They do it to pass the time, but really they want to be home in front of their bigger TVs so they can concentrate on what they're watching. Nobody wants to watch entertainment on the go. They'll do it because they have smartphones and they can watch things on the go. But it's not the optimal way anybody wants to watch anything, because you cannot concentrate. When you are on the go, like I guess when you're waiting in line for someplace, but even if you're on the subway, if you get too engrossed in your whatever show you're watching, even if it's only 5 minutes, you might miss your stop. So you're never actually paying as much attention as you would if you were at home. This idea that you're going to break a movie up, a 2-hour movie up into 10 parts or whatever, into QUIBIs? Oh my God. QUIBI attracted blue chip hang on. No, wait. I'm sorry. QUIBI attracted blue chip advertisers, including PepsiCo, Walmart, and Anheuser-Busch, securing about $150 million in ad revenue in the run-up to its launch. Those deals came under strain earlier this year amid lower-than-expected viewership for QUIBI shows, prompting advertisers to defer their payments. So they took advertising dollars, but they couldn't deliver the eyes on those ads, so the advertisers got to defer their payments. I mean, come on, man. You got to build up to these things. You don't just get to have Anheuser-Busch or Walmart or Pepsi-Cola buying ad revenue on your platform if you can't provide the eyes. I mean, what are you thinking? In recent weeks, QUIBI hired a restructuring firm to evaluate its options, the People said. The firm recommended the options to the board of directors this week, a list that included shutting the company down. I bet that was the only thing on the list. Here's what we advise. Shut the company down. Call it a day, boys. QUIBI is holding a call with its investors later Wednesday to update them on the status of the company, some of the people said. The information earlier reported that Mr. Katzenberg told people in the media industry he may have to shut down the company. The decision to hire the reorganization firm came after starting a process to sell the company, the Wall Street Journal reported. QUIBI pitched suitors, including Comcast Corp's NBC Universal, on a sale, according to people familiar with the matter, but would-be buyers were put off by the fact that QUIBI doesn't own many of the shows it puts on its platform. What did I talk about the last time I reported about QUIBI? They don't own any of their shows. Not only do they not own any of their shows, hey, after your show airs, you can keep it. Like, what entertainment executive would have ever agreed to this? And why did I not get a piece of this beforehand? Because I would love it if I could have made some awesome programming that I came up with that QUIBI paid for that would revert back to me. Because you know what? You know who actually came out ahead? All the creators that made QUIBI shows. Good on you. Because you got somebody to pay for your shit and now you own it again. It's all yours. You can do with it whatever you want. I mean, this is the greatest deal for creators in history. So maybe QUIBI wasn't such a bad idea at all if you were big enough to get some programming on the platform. And you know what? If you are, God love you, because that means you're already successful. But how QUIBI could not own your shit, I don't know. I feel terrible. I feel terrible. I should not. These are the things that you burn in hell for. You know, these are the things that if you take joy in the mishaps of others, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe I shouldn't. I should not. I just, as somebody who's worked a long time in the entertainment business doing various kinds of things, I just have looked at this and I just don't understand how this happened. I don't understand how otherwise intelligent people could come up with something so monumentally stupid as QUIBI. Not only was the idea stupid, but then allowing people to own their programming. Because the only thing, why do you think people want to buy a studio? And Jeffrey Katzenberg's worked at a few. What makes a studio valuable? Their backlot? Their real estate? No. What makes a studio valuable is the IP that they own. The movies and TV shows that they've produced. That's what makes them valuable. We're still watching movies since the dawn of time, since the dawn of movie making. So that's never going to change. People are going to be watching, hopefully if we're still here, people will be watching Casablanca in 100 years. Warner Brothers has a very, very, very deep library. That's what makes them valuable. Anybody who's ever worked in Hollywood knows this. So QUIBI gave away the rights to the programming that they were making, which makes QUIBI worthless. Who's going to buy it? What, are you going to buy something so people can watch on the phones this way or this way, and the way they're watching it this way and this way is now under litigation anyway? How does that happen? You ripped off your own technology that you call so revolutionary? You think no one's going to perhaps come after you after that? The people that made... you know what? It really bothers me to see something like this crash and burn made by smart people. I don't like to see smart people do stupid things and then, blaming it on a pandemic when everybody's actually in a position to only watch something. Oh, but that's why we were only going to have entertainment for people on the go. All of these things, everything that has ever been said about this platform has been monumentally dumb. And I really want it. You know what? I would love to interview Jeffrey Katzenberg. Jeff, I promise I'll ask a few questions about Star Trek The Motion Picture. But if you're ever available, and apparently you will be soon, I'd love to have you come on this platform, my show here. And it's free. You know, it's free. It's not for people on the go. It's for people with attention spans. But I want to know. I want to know about the decisions that led up to this. I hope somebody writes an expose book like The Devil's Candy about the making of, the making of, I worked on it, the making of Bonfire of the Vanities. Yes, I was at Warner Brothers when that movie was made, so I got to see a lot of the shenanigans from the studio side of things. I want to read the book about the demise of QUIBI. Or to use the word demise, assumes that it was already there to have an untimely demise. But I don't think QUIBI ever was born, really. It was I don't know. I don't want to belabor the point. You all know, if you've watched this channel, you know what I felt about QUIBI. I just look, the succession of stories. 4 o'clock in the morning. Hey, QUIBI's on Apple TV now. Good for QUIBI. Only in horizontal mode. Aha, good for you. You've learned something. And then before noon today, they're weighing whether or not they're going to shut down. And then by 3:30 Eastern time, bye-bye, QUIBI. Wow. We hardly knew you. We're all the better for it. I feel terrible. I do. I hate seeing all this wasted effort. This should not have happened. How this happened, I do not know. But it should not have happened. Should not have happened. Just a succession of bad ideas. Bad idea genes. Remember that? Bad idea genes? Well, let me tell you. Bad idea. Sister Harrow agrees with me. Sister Harrow sent in a super chat and said, "You nailed it. Thought of you when I read the story." Well, sister, I have to say, I'm glad to be thought of, because I've been beating the anti-QUIBI drum for a long time. And I certainly wasn't wrong, but that's not a good thing to be proven right over something like this. You don't want things like this to happen. I want things to succeed in the entertainment business. I want people's efforts to be rewarded. But this was something that was bad from the beginning. And I don't understand. I wish somebody gave me $1.75 billion, because I could have done so much more with it. I would have made my investors 30%. I would have gotten 30% on their money. I wouldn't. And now, every one of those deep-pocketed investors has to live with the fact that they invested in one of the stupidest entertainment platforms that ever existed. I don't know, man. Listen, if any of you investors that feel burned by QUIBI want somewhere to go and take your money, well, I'll tell you what. I'll take a fraction of it, and I'll make some things that are a lot better than QUIBI, and we'll make some money together. How about that? I got a few projects I can think of about investing in right this moment. And I promise you, I'll get you back 30% on your money within 6 months. How about that? Huh? But you have to show me that you actually invested in QUIBI. All right. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls from across the 28 known galaxies. Let's hear from you guys and girls and people and lovely folks and imagination connoisseurs from around the galaxy. Let's hear from you guys. Kenny Crayley Jr. writes in, "Hey, dear Robert. Hey, Robert, members of the Post-Geek Singularity, I'm back with another letter. And for today's letter, I wanted to talk about my love for Star Trek, mainly TOS, TNG, and Deep Space Nine, plus the first 10 films featuring the crews of the TOS and TNG Enterprises, and what I think is wrong with modern Star Trek. So here goes. By the way, I didn't know this was going to come up first. Am I having fun on this episode of Robservations or what? I grew up a Star Trek fan, watching the original series on reruns on my local TV station in Northeast Ohio, in Cleveland, Ohio, on WUAB TV 43, later renamed UPN 43 and now CW 43. I love the adventures of the crew of the USS Enterprise NCC 1701, of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, plus the other crew members. Then 1987 comes and Star Trek The Next Generation comes out, and while the first 2 seasons were not great, it did get way better once Season 3 came along, and I was a fan of TNG from that moment forward. The TOS movies are of the TOS movies, my favorite is the trilogy of Star Trek 2, 3, and 4, with The Wrath of Khan being my favorite. Khan! The TNG movies only, by the way, he wrote that, Khan. The TNG movies only saw Star Trek Generations with my dad in the theater during Christmas of 1994. While the movie was not great, it was fun time seeing a Star Trek film at a theater, and I got a free poster, the one sheet with Kirk and Picard on it. Deep Space Nine is my second favorite Star Trek series behind The Next Generation. The adventures of Captain Benjamin Sisko and the crew of the DS9 always brought a smile to my face week to week seeing the episodes. That series needs a remaster done someday. Hear, hear. You know what, QUIBI investors? If you're willing to give me enough money, I would love to remaster both Voyager and Deep Space Nine. We'll need about $20 million per series. And, well, if you want to hire enough crew, we can do it in 4 years, but if not, it's going to take 8 to remaster both shows. Just saying. Star Trek Voyager and Star Trek Enterprise started off strong, first few seasons, but fizzled out very quickly. Not my favorite. Now modern Star Trek. Where oh where did Paramount and CBS go wrong with Trek? Star Trek 2009, Into Darkness, and Beyond were good concepts for newer Trek films from J.J. Abrams, but poorly executed, and it's not Star Trek. At least the Star Trek I remember. The new Star Trek series from CBS, poor writing in all of them. Discovery's bad, and while I did like aspects of Picard, again, not the best written show. What do all these Star Trek shows and films in modern Trek have in common? Well, as you've said many times, Robert, it's that they don't have the right people involved who care about Star Trek. The Star Trek that Gene Roddenberry and Harve Bennett and even Rick Berman created before he lost his way. I can only hope Star Trek someday, somehow, gets back to where it was always, and that is exploring the unknown, visiting strange new worlds, and going where no man has gone or no one has gone before. Those are my thoughts. Take care, Robert, and I know you will have a lot to say on this. Keep up the amazing work you do and live long and prosper. Sincerely, longtime watcher and listener, Kenny Crayley Jr. from Ohio. Well, Kenny, great letter. I don't know if there's anything more to say that I haven't already said about this topic. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And I think everything wrong with Star Trek is actually exemplified in the first episode of the 3rd season of Discovery, which admittedly I even kind of liked. Well, what's wrong with Star Trek is it's everything but Star Trek. Let's take everything from every other science fiction franchise, beginning with a character named Book. Really? Why don't you rename Michael Burnham and name her Ripley? I mean, it's Star Trek Discovery Season 3 had about, even the makeup, as somebody pointed out, looked like one of the orcs from that wanted to eat the hobbits in the Lord of the Rings movies. The makeup's almost exactly the same. I mean, it's just an amalgamation of a dozen other different things when it should be a Star Trek show. And it's unfortunately not. What are you gonna do? I don't know, but maybe Star Trek will get better someday. I don't know. Christopher McCulloch writes in. Christopher McCulloch. Mr. Burnett. Well, this one really got away from me. When Omar94 wrote in on tonal shifts in film franchises, I immediately thought of the Disneyfication and one of your common criticisms of Return of the Jedi. I've been waiting for the right angle to tackle this topic, and this letter has been stewing for some time, which is the only reason I can think of why it dwarfs any of my previous missives. Ooh, this is really a long letter. I do make an effort with my letters never to overstay my welcome. I hope that doesn't happen today. Well, folks, strap in. Here comes Mr. McCullough, and he has a lot to say. Brother Omar wrote in on the tonal shifts that can occur in film franchises. The shift is usually in the same direction, from a gritty or realistic premise to less cynical fare. This used to be a phenomenon called the Disneyfication, for the rough edges Walt sanded down when boulderizing fairy tales for children who would never know medieval hardship, and their parents. But in an age where the House of Mouse has subsumed nearly every organ of creativity, that now seems somehow inadequate. Something else I recognized, and the subject of this letter, was the angle I'd been waiting for to defend the last film in the greatest story ever told, Return of the Jedi. There's a lot of douche minutia. I have never heard that. There's a lot of douche minutia in Star Wars criticism. I'll be writing on what I consider the valid points against Jedi, namely the question of tone, the Jabba Gambit, the only woman in the galaxy is my sister, and the Death Star 2. Let the Ewokey win. Because the tonal shift in Star Wars seems to be the most common criticism of Jedi, I'd like to say that such a shift in tone is not always a bad thing. The problem comes when that shift happens counterintuitive to the narrative being told. For Star Wars, whose narrative is about a galaxy returning to the light side after being plunged into darkness, this shift in tone is part of the narrative. Say what you will about the retrofitted title, but Lucas chose A New Hope for a reason. There is also a penchant to conflate the tone in Jedi as being somewhat indicative of the Star Wars universe as a whole. But if Star Wars is one thing, it's large enough to contain multiple tones, genres, and styles, just by virtue of its immense scope. Even so, for many the shifts in Jedi are a little too abrupt. The typical example of this is the Ewoks. If there is a mascot for the perceived Disneyfication of Star Wars, it's this race of furry tree bears. Their offense usually comes in two forms: their clear design as ready-made toys and their incredible ability to thwart the Empire's forces. Hold on a second. Oh, I was wondering what that sound is, and apparently it's a lawnmower. It is easy to understand the provenance of this first point. By the time Jedi was released, the world had been forever changed by the true foundation of Lucasfilm, merchandising. If Bart Simpson dolls are the face of the future's landfills, he sits atop a solid bedrock of Kenner plastic. The ubiquity of the Star Wars toy empire was well ensconced in the zeitgeist by Jedi, so it's easy to understand the oversensitivity people exhibit as they guard against another round of kidney punches to their wallets, with every movie by Lucasfilm no longer viewed as art but a toy commercial. This kind of mentality was still alive and well during the prequels, and being purchased by Disney has only intensified it, as we saw with the Porgs, who might have supplanted Ewoks as a mascot if they'd been in a better-loved movie. I don't consider this to be a valid avenue of criticism. Whatever your opinion of merchandising, if you let it color your opinion of the art it's based on, you're no longer an honest broker in the exchange between art and your audience. The only question should be, do they serve the story? Which brings us to the second point. This is the more interesting point of contention because it cleaves so closely to the themes of the trilogy as a struggle against oppression and cynicism, through a belief in universal fellowship. When people scoff at the primitive Ewoks overcoming an Imperial garrison merely through grit and moxie, ask yourself, how is this not in keeping with the story being told? How does it make less sense than being able to hit an exhaust port so small that it's impossible even for a computer, or an assault on a battle station that's more like suicide? The fight against cynicism is not incidental in these movies, just as the one and abiding flaw of the Empire is hubris, the same hubris that made Tarkin say, "I think you overestimate that chances." Vader to think he could supplant the Emperor, and the hubris that blinded the Emperor of the known galaxy to never expect love could undo him, or take Ewoks seriously. So thematically, the Ewoks serve the story, and if that isn't enough, for instance, the elaborate system of traps and blunt force trauma the Ewoks use to fight a mechanized enemy is your great hurdle. I'll have you dip into the douche minutia. I can't help you with the blunt force trauma, except that hitting someone in the head with a rock will never go out of style. As far as the traps, the best I can offer comes from the Ewok battle horn sounding. If you think that sounding the Ewok battle horn means, oh, time for battle, let's quickly make some elaborate traps and attack the intruders, then yes, it's far-fetched. If it instead means, with these new allies and their golden god, our long-laid battle plans can come to fruition, make ready for battle, sounds more or less plausible. I'll leave it to you. You know, I can't go with you here, man. I gotta say, let me just interrupt your article, your letter, which I think is always, as you always do, very well written. But here's the thing: as the viceroy of verisimilitude, One of the things that Star Wars does quite well is, even though there's sound in space, and even though X-Wing fighters act like, well, fighters in an atmosphere, in a vacuum, in the vacuum of outer space, and even though there's explosions and sounds and all of that, Star Wars made you believe in that world. Now, I'm talking about the original, not the special editions, which adds a whole lot more CGI to the mix. But the original Star Wars, no one had ever seen anything like it, and it made you believe. The aliens made you believe. The robots made you believe. Everything made you believe in that universe. I think the problem with the Ewoks, it's not that they're a small, furry fighting force. It's that they don't look like they are real. You don't believe them. You understand why they're there, but the first time you see them, from the noises they make, to the design of them, to the way that they act, and the way their technology, or lack thereof, the villages they live in, you don't believe that. It doesn't work in the Star Wars universe. You can say all you want, but not a lot of Return of the Jedi works from... look, I'm the Viceroy of Verisimilitude. Max Rebo, Cy Snoodles, and the Rebo Band. I mean, we've been seeing aliens up to this point where you believe. You believe in Yoda. You believe. Yoda makes you believe. But you don't believe in the Ewoks. Nothing. Return of the Jedi does not do a very good job making you believe in any of it. The lighting, even the lighting, when R2 and 3PO go up to the door of Jabba's palace, that's clearly on a set. You can tell. The way it's lit, it's on a set. As a matter of fact, not a lot of the lighting in Return of the Jedi, the end battle sequence in the Emperor's chambers, that's pretty cool. But the movie is... the matte paintings... There's a lot of stuff in Return of the Jedi. The explosion when the Executor goes nose first into the Death Star. I mean, it looks like somebody just turned on a flame. There's a lot of Return of the Jedi that you just don't believe. Now, I know that there's a lot of people, it was their first Star Wars movie, so that's why they love it. But if you watch Star Wars and Empire, and then you watch Return of the Jedi right afterwards, people aren't even in character. But anyway, it's not douche minutia. It's an overall sense of no verisimilitude, even in their own universe. To close this point about tone, I think the real issue is something a little deeper. Frankly, after being shown such a very tantalizing vertical slice of the Star Wars universe in Star Wars and Empire, people are just less invested in the story of the rebellion. The sleazy saloons, the smugglers, the bounty hunters, and worlds with strange creatures and cultures are the stuff of wonder and imagination. The story of the Jedi and the battle between light and dark are the mystical underpinnings of everything in the universe, but it's also too big for a lot of people to really engage with. The low fantasy world we started with becomes high fantasy when the space samurai battles and the ancient wizard over a doomsday machine. This would come up often later in the EU era as people lamented the prevalence of Jedi in their stories, both because it cheapened the magic of the Force if there were so many wizards running around, but also because it stole oxygen away from the heavy metal stories that flesh out the universe. This isn't really a fault with Return of the Jedi, it's just that while the story of Luke and the Rebellion is the most important one, it's also one of the many stories people want to see in this galaxy. See, I totally disagree with you. I think that at the end of Empire Strikes Back, one of the great cliffhangers of all time, but it really wasn't a cliffhanger because no one's hanging off a cliff and the story was over. They just needed to begin another story, which is to rescue Han Solo. But I think everybody was interested and invested in what was going to happen with Luke, now knowing Vader was his father. That was what was the primary thing that was interesting to people coming back. They wanted to know the outcome of that. You know, would Luke finish his training with the Force? Would he hook back up with Yoda to then go and once again confront Darth Vader? I mean, the reason people love Star Wars isn't just the universe, it's because of those characters. First and foremost, you love Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie, R2, 3PO, later Lando. I mean, you love these characters because these characters were lovable. You'll follow them anywhere. You'll go anywhere with these characters. And they were front and center. The problem was, you know, when you have the Ewoks, this force of Ewoks, in a way, the Ewoks were distracting. You know, they were taking you away from all that stuff. But anyway, the Jabba Gambit. Of course, these facets of the Star Wars universe do intersect in Jedi's first act at Jabba's palace. As far as tone goes, if anyone thinks the Henson-style creatures and blitzed-out demeanor of the palace's inhabitants softened the tone of Tatooine's villainous underground, let me remind you, we are introduced to this slug's depravity when, after his first dancing slave spurns his advances, he publicly feeds her to his pit bull for the amusement of all. Hey, I agree with you, but you know what? It looks like a totally different movie than, say, Star Wars did. All of the creatures, from the Gamorrean guards to, I said, Sy Snoodles, they look like they're from a cartoon show, not from the real universe that Star Wars had set up in Star Wars and Empire. They were too goofy. As for the Gambit itself, if you think you're getting any satisfying way to untangle this rat's nest of escalating bad ideas, it's not for me. But long odds and bad ideas make little more sense if we factor in the new character of Luke Skywalker. What people tend to downplay with Luke's character in this film is much of it he's making up as he goes along. When Luke tells Jabba, "I'm Luke Skywalker, Jedi Knight," it isn't a total lie. Luke is unsure if it's true himself, as we see later when he remarks to Yoda, "Then I am a Jedi." His plan is to do what Jedi supposedly do, trust in his feelings, his new abilities, and for good measure, overload the box with enough allies so when the action starts, the whithers and wherefores aren't so important when you're jamming with the Force. Somehow I've always known. Maybe the most controversial decision made by the film, making Luke and Leia twin siblings, has certainly irked a number of fans and caused some snickering too. Luke and Leia kiss a few times, but more than a few fans of the day were invested in the love triangle at play between our trio of heroes. It's also used as evidence that Lucas didn't have the trilogy planned out from the beginning. And to that I say, big fucking deal. Lightning from heaven didn't strike Lucas as he was putting pen to paper. You think good ideas come extemporaneously? I bet Luke's sister was Leia all along, also another character entirely, and non-existent at all. And that goes for Vader being his father too. During the writing process, the answer is always all of the above, because everything is a work in progress until it's taken away from you, unless you're Lucas, in which case, somebody please take it away from him. I didn't come to these films until after they were done, so any potential speculation on Luke and Leia being destined for each other never affected my understanding of this movie. I personally don't think the Empire left much room either. Think Empire. But the concept of long-lost siblings is very mythic, and even incest is more common in myth than many realize, from the Greek gods, the Nibelungenkind, to King Arthur. So fitting, in fact, that I was even looking for it in the sequels, they had already created a Mordred for Star Wars, and Rey seemed to have such an easy connection with Leia and a fixation on Luke that I began to wonder. I don't mean that in a lurid way, but likely as some kind of dark alchemy someone like the Emperor or Snoke would have concocted to create their own virgins. There was a moment in The Last Jedi as Rey, looking at a reflection in the cove, sees two shadowy figures joined to become her reflection, where I thought, are they going there? But I guess that would have been a little too edgy for Star Wars' resident teenage iconoclast and master of subversion. I don't think I'm the only one who picked up on this. I think Christian Harloff had a similar experience. I mean, whoever that is. The real tragedy of this plot point doesn't really come until the prequels. As far as I can tell, Luke rejecting or being denied of any kind of romantic development is where the concept of Jedi celibacy comes from. For a religion that celebrates life so much, to deny themselves this fundamental pursuit of life strikes me as odd. It's sad to think that there's a good chance Luke lived and died with this ever being a part of his life. So what could have been just a special circumstance, a father and son sensitive to the Force, now means all Jedi are potential founders of a Force-sensitive line of despots. It's causing more and more problems down the line. Bet you didn't fully realize what trouble a broom boy really meant for the galaxy. The printer's devil. There's no getting around it. Much like when watching a marathon of The Twilight Zone, one of these is not like the others when it comes to the cinematography of these three movies. Lucas is a well-documented micromanager, and after getting hosed on The Empire Strikes Back, he became the worst thing you can imagine for someone who is also your creative director, a bean counter. It's an attitude that would carry on into the prequel era. All of these advances in computer-generated movie making that Lucas spurred seem to be for these two reasons: total control over the scene and as a cost-saving measure, with the goal of making obsolete such things as sets, costumes, and anything else you might actually have to have crafted before the editing process. As for the printer's devil, Richard Marquand is often damned with faint praise of being a competent director, or less charitably as merely a marionette for the real director on the picture. Unlike every other person even tangentially related to the making of these films, there is little hope of getting that kind of post-mortem on his direction of Jedi because he died so soon after the film was made. This isn't really a defense of the direction of Jedi. It's undeniable. With better direction, there would be fewer chinks in the armor for people to attack this movie. But with the kind of hyper-scrutiny every one of these movies receives, people looking for faults will find and accentuate them even where they don't exist. To end, unlike the other movies, I think, there is one undeniable fault with Jedi. One that, unlike many, isn't a matter of perspective, like how, from a certain point of view, people now view a certain exhaust vent on the Death Star as a plot hole, or how time and the prequels have created logical or continuity errors that never existed before. What I'm talking about is how the climax of Return of the Jedi is the same as Star Wars. The Empire has built a Death Star, the Rebels need to assault the Death Star with the fate of the galaxy in the balance. The reason for this is well documented. Lucas moved the climax of his multi-volume headcanon to the first movie, because what are the chances he'd get to make another? Not many sequels being made in Hollywood that don't involve apes, so go big or go home. Growing up atop that pillar, I always figured the second Death Star was the salvaged wreckage of the first Death Star, which would explain a few things, like how the Empire could build it so quickly and in secret, and why it looks battle-damaged. I've since heard that it is in fact a super Death Star twice as big as the first. Thankfully, whatever isn't in the movie isn't always canon, but even that is still slightly better than some of the early drafts that had the Emperor's great intrigue being that there were in fact two Death Stars. Clearly, that was the flaw in their plans the first time. Thankfully, that didn't come to pass, but I reckon that the ghost of this plot is still present in the dual assault, with instead of a second Death Star, our heroes assaulting a shield generator. Even if I consider this a grave structural problem, which film really suffers from it? A quirk of history made Lucas put the Death Star assault in the first movie, allowing him to make a third. You can hold it against him that he didn't come up with better alternatives, but where do you go after a Death Star? I'll spare you my ideas. We've seen some options in the sequel movies, an even bigger Death Star, an even badder Emperor. Neither worked well, but neither were the stories particularly well told. So the sequels do tell us something. A Death Star could be the climax of every movie, and if it's a good story, it will work in 4 and 6, and if it's not, it won't in 7 and 10, or 9. Still there? This letter isn't the last word on the subject. I hope you won't hold it against me when I say I wouldn't mind if the discourse is hijacked by this topic for a few cycles. Nothing makes me happier than new thoughts. Christopher, the soul of wit, McCulloch. Sorry, brah. I can't go with you here. I think Return of the Jedi on almost every level is a step down from both Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. I don't like the way the characters are portrayed. I don't think the story is particularly interesting. After you have the Jabba sequence, which is thrilling. I like it. I just don't like the designs of any of the creatures in it. And I do like the end, the confrontation with Luke and the Emperor and Vader. The rest of the movie is sort of inconsequential. Not much happens. And I just don't think it's particularly good. I don't think many people are good in the movie. The characters are not great, and I don't know. I've never liked Return of the Jedi. I think it's a huge step down from Star Wars and Empire. I know that seems blasphemous, but Return of the Jedi was to this day, the most disappointing movie I ever saw in my life was Return of the Jedi. I saw it when I was 16. Obviously, I was a fanatical Star Wars fan. I could not wait to see it. And when I saw it, I was like, that's it? I wanted a Lawrence of Arabia-sized epic, something that was monstrously huge. And what I got was a retread of Star Wars. I hate to say it, the Ewoks or the Wookiees, I wasn't interested in seeing. I wanted something like Coruscant in Jedi. I wanted to see the story get bigger and bigger than it did in Empire. And in Empire, we were in Cloud City. We got to see a new environment. We went someplace different. And with the Death Star, we went to even the Forest Moon of Endor. I mean, after being on Dagobah, which was a cool swamp that was half practical, half matte painting, we basically went to California, into the redwoods. And I'm like, okay, I mean, even that environment wasn't very interesting. It certainly wasn't Alien, not to me. And then you're in sand dunes. I guess that made sense because it was Tatooine. But still, there was not a whole lot in Return of the Jedi that I found very exciting. And I was the person primed to love it the most. But anyway, an interesting letter, but I don't agree with you. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't write in with another impassioned defense, because I'll read it. I will read it. Omar94 writes in, "Hi Rob, since it seems like anything is possible or could be made now because of how advanced film technology is, that has me wondering if there was anything out there to make which is still considered unfilmable. George R. R. Martin said he chose to write the Song of Ice and Fire series in prose form because when he was a screenwriter in Hollywood, all his scripts kept getting rejected because of how expensive it would cost to make. Now, however, his book series was made into a TV show with some limitations. I've never read the books or seen the Game of Thrones show, but apparently one difference between them is the Iron Throne is bigger and more menacing in the books than the show. James Cameron tried making Avatar in the 90s but couldn't because the technology was not up to date. But if it was made back then, it would have cost $400 million to pull off. But after 10 years or so, he made it, and we're now waiting for the sequels, which will show us underwater motion capture. I'm not sure what else is out there that is considered unfilmable, but we'll see what comes our way. Thanks, and live long and prosper." Well, you know, I don't necessarily think that things that were considered unfilmable are necessarily the biggest things. The English Patient was considered to be pretty unfilmable. Cronenberg's adaptations of both Crash and Naked Lunch were kind of considered unfilmable. Watchmen was considered unfilmable for a while, and it got made. So I mean, I think anything can be filmed somehow, depending on how you approach it. And now with the technology, pretty much anything you can dream of, you can make. And I think that's a pretty exciting place to be. So yeah. Yes, indeed. A lot of letters. Jason Webster says, "Hi, Robert. I hope yourself and all the engaging members of the Post-Geek Singularity have been able to find ways of feeling contented despite the serendipitous conundrum the world faces in the form of the pandemic. Star Wars changed the game in terms of how science fiction films would be produced. Before Star Wars, studios had been in the process of or had completed the process of either scaling back or downright closing their effects departments. High-risk concept, big-budget films such as Hello, Dolly had lost the studios money. The expense of such films had yielded little to no returns and were mediocre or massive flops. Studios were reeling and turned to predominantly making low-budget fare that featured realistic stories that resonated with audiences. MASH, The French Connection, Serpico, and The Conversation. And don't forget this was an era of deep pessimism due to the Vietnam War, Watergate scandal, and the oil crisis of '73, which all contributed to a struggling economy in the shape of a global recession, all of which further exacerbated the plight for the studios. These films, along with blaxploitation films such as Shaft and Superfly, filled the void as they resonated and found success, keeping the Hollywood machine afloat for Jaws in 1976 and Star Wars to save the industry from collapse. Star Wars and similar films gave everybody a shot in the arm to start enjoying things again and forget about their worries. In terms of science fiction films, there were two distinct eras, before Star Wars and after Star Wars. Before Star Wars saw films that were bleak dystopian nightmares in the form of The Omega Man, Silent Running, and Logan's Run. Studios had either shut down or scaled back their visual effects departments, so science fiction films had effects akin to what season Logan's Run, which, by the way, won an Academy Award, just to point out. After Star Wars came the fact that all studios became encouraged to produce big-budget, high-concept juggernauts like the Star Trek franchise, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Battlestar Galactica, Alien, Blade Runner, and E.T. the Extraterrestrial. These films were either rollicking action adventures, philosophical slow burns, or compelling thrillers. The age of the blockbuster had begun. This is because studios saw what expensive star-driven films that were highly marketed could accumulate financially. Studios had begun to refurbish and upscale their effects departments to meet the requirements to produce such ambitious projects. One of the reasons Star Wars did so well was because of the realistic effects of the film. Lucas had to establish Industrial Light and Magic and hire John Dykstra in order to produce the effects needed because the 20th Century Fox department did not have the effects that could sufficiently produce the effects required. With the success of Star Wars, studios realized that they could make films that spawned massive, long-running, self-sustaining, and high-earning industries around such properties through ancillary markets, merchandising, broadcast rights, and theme park attractions. There was a great documentary released in 2000 entitled The Monster That Ate Hollywood, on how blockbusters changed Hollywood's method for producing films, especially blockbusters, not only in terms of production and types of films produced, but also marketing and distribution in terms of front-loading blockbusters for massive opening weekend releases to ensure they maximize the profit early, as viewing habits have begun to change in terms of the types of movies predominantly chosen by audiences and when audiences chose to view these movies. So blockbusters came to dominate with such films as the Jurassic Park franchise, Independence Day, Indiana Jones, and the Avengers, and further installments of the Star Wars franchise, among numerous others. Now, the film industry and theater owners have a long history of repeating itself in the form of having to avert a major crisis. Whereas the crisis in the 70s was largely due to a global financial recession, the new crisis is due to the global pandemic, COVID-19, and has resoundingly thrown a huge spanner in the works of the contemporary model of the distribution and exhibition of films. The question is, what will it mean for theaters? The landscape is going to be different because a lot of cinemas will have closed because it was not financially viable to keep them open. Because there's a lot of costs in keeping them open: rent, amenities, gas, water, and electricity, supply costs, and paying staff. At what point does the situation start to look like you're losing money to remain open? And some theaters are already experiencing this. Now, I love the theater-going experience as much as anyone, and I would never want to see that go away for many reasons. The social aspect, going to the movie with family or friends and engaging in earnest conversation before and after the movie. The sights, sounds, smells, tastes associated with cinema going. The aroma of a freshly cleaned theater. The intoxicating smell of confectionery at the concession stand. The sweet, comforting taste as you chew down on warm popcorn or a chalk-top ice cream, and the sheer scale of the screen that allows you to sit wide-eyed and transfixed in picking up every detail of the movie. Sometimes that's not so good, as in the case of Return of the Jedi. I just threw that in. That is before you even think of the volume of the audio track that can potentially and literally reach cinema-shaking levels in certain scenes, especially if you're watching the latest chapter of either the Star Wars, Mission Impossible, or Fast and the Furious franchise. Economic flow-on to local businesses such as restaurants, cafes, and moviegoers may choose to eat before or after the movie. Some may take the opportunity for retail shopping. Moviegoing is one of the very few inexpensive event-style entertainment options available to the public. Yes, Chris Rock was talking about this. However, in light of the woes of AMC, the scenario might be one where we have to steel ourselves and eventually come to terms with one of two possibilities: theatrical exhibition of movies becoming a small niche market with a limited number of films showing, mostly tentpole productions being exhibited. There will be dramatic closures of numerous theaters. AMC could be gone from the landscape come early next year. We will see the closure of some medium to small independent theaters, in which case we could see studios swooping in to own a small number of theaters if they deem it financially viable. The worst case scenario of movie theaters disappearing with movies headed direct to VOD. If theaters do survive, as I've mentioned, many of the smaller films will be released through streaming, leaving tentpole films becoming the only draw card for cinema going. However, the number of tentpole productions released will be scaled back too. The big theater chains may have to create their own streaming service to counter the loss of the number of films exhibited in their cinemas and the subsequent loss of revenues that will entail. They may have to look into establishing their own drive-ins and reinvigorate them as a theatrical exhibition platform, or enter agreements with studios that ensure a percentage of smaller films will still receive theatrical distribution. They will have to cleverly market and strategically schedule movie marathons and discount days more aggressively than in the past. They're going to have to utilize social media on a larger scale. They will have to look even closer at their rewards programs and retool them to operate more effectively in a post-COVID world. Studios and theaters may have to accept that they will have to return to the old model of releasing films in theaters and cease, at least in the interim, of front-loading movies for a wide-scale opening weekend release. Open films to small numbers of theaters and gradually increase the number of theaters. Effectively, this means films will have to remain in cinemas longer. Audiences will have to readjust their viewing habits regarding theatrically released films accordingly. One thing is certain: everything's up in the air, so we will just have to wait and see how it all plays out. All we can do is support moviegoing when and where, and remain hopeful of a positive outcome. To yourself, Robert, and to all the members of the Post-Geek Singularity, I hope that everyone is enjoying an excellent day or night wherever one may reside on the huge rock we call Earth. Stay safe, healthy, and happy. Sincerely, Jason Webster. What a lovely letter, Jason. Thank you very much. James writes in. He writes, "Hey Rob, I was just wondering something about the uh, about the Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. Are the winners of the films required to have any kind of an interview? Thanks." That is a very good question, James. And here's what I would like to do. Let me explain how this is going to work. So, what we're going to do is I am going to. I've got a bunch of films I still have to do. By the way, since you asked, there's a few things that came up with people that have entered films into the festival. And normally I would have thought all films, my idea was that all films were going to be relatively new, and they were supposed to be, one of the rules of the festival is that the films had to be a universal premiere. Well, some people, such as the film Four Eyes, the man who submitted it, he didn't realize that. He might have skipped over that part of the rules, which is entirely possible. People just, sometimes they don't read all the rules and they submit their films. Well, I realized that, first of all, people paid an entrance fee, and we can't return it. So what I decided to do was, if you made a film, if you submitted a film that's an older movie, like, you made it 8 years ago or something, and it's played at other festivals, but you've sent it to me anyway, I've decided to play your films, to make them part of the festival, and they're just not in competition. So what's interesting about that is I can still show these movies, and they're not in competition. The only movies that are in competition are the ones that can qualify to be in competition. I've gone to lots of film festivals. They show retrospectives, they show older movies and things like that. So I have no problem allowing movies to be shown, because I figured, you know what? Especially when I see films like Blood Brothers that I put up last night, and also Four Eyes, those are good pieces of work. And there's no reason why this film festival shouldn't be promoting good pieces of work, especially when people have taken the time to send them in to me. So if you want to send a film that is older, that you want to get some exposure for or something like that, I have one that I need to put up already, a couple more actually that need to go up. I've decided I'm going to put your film up and we'll promote it and it'll be part of the festival. It just won't be in competition. Now, that's the best I can do, because rules are rules, and it has to be a universal premiere. Now, as for the question James asked, what I want to do, how it's going to work is, after December 1st, we are not going to allow any more movies into the festival. And then I'm going to watch all the films, and I'm going to pick the semifinalists, the films that I think most represent what the festival is about. Then I am going to distribute those movies to my judges, and the judges will vote on the semifinalists. And when I find out the names of those films, I'm going to contact the filmmakers, and I am going to try and do, whether it's a Skype interview, I want to do interviews with the filmmakers that are semifinalists. And on Christmas Day, I'm going to make a big pre-recorded show with all of the semifinalists together in this long show. And I want to include my own commentary on each film, and I would love to have pre-recorded interviews with the filmmakers. So indeed, James, that's what I was planning on doing. And then when that will air on Christmas Day, I'll drop it Christmas Day. And then after that, you can, watch it to your heart's content. But then on New Year's Day, Elizabeth and I are going to have the awards show. And I should mention that there are, like, one of the awards that I can mention is the best on-screen performance is being presented by Beecher's Homemade Cheese. And they have sponsored a $200 cash prize. And there will be a trophy as well, and we'll have posters for the winners and things like that. So that's pretty cool. There are going to be all the awards are sponsored. I think there's 11 awards. So there's going to be 11 cash prizes, and I'll be unveiling that in the coming weeks, all up through December 1st. So there's more to come. So I want to thank you for writing in, James. But if anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate. Don't hesitate to ask. So yeah, let's see. This one comes from Tom Bidiscombe. I think it's Biddiscombe. What a cool last name. Biddiscombe. Biddiscombe. Hi, Rob. It's sad to me to see how many film studios are forced to send pay-per-view. Are forced to send to pay-per-view. Oh, it's sad to me how many films studios are forced to send to pay-per-view. I've been thinking about studios approaching the approach to... I can't read this. I can. I just can't read this for whatever reason. Let me take a deep breath. You know what? Let me go see what you're saying first. Before I read this, I'm going to jump back over and see what you guys are saying. Let's see. Wow, I don't even know where I was. So Sister Harrow, okay. Mr. Tickletrunk sent in a super chat and says, if anyone needed to know, this is Rob's I told you so face. Mr. Tickletrunk goes on to say, tell Jeffrey Katzenberg I have a bridge to sell him. John sends in a super chat. Thanks for that, John. Maybe you could band all the former QUIBI creators together to do full-length features for the Burnettwork. The first feature, The Rise and Fall of QUIBI, written and executive produced by RMB. Wait a minute, I can't direct it? No, I'm just kidding. Kaz Graphics, who, by the way, Kaz Graphics arranged for the Beecher's Homemade Cheese Award. And as everyone knows, Kaz Graphics is the official cheesemonger of the Burnettwork. Chaz Graphics says, just sending some love for this channel. I believe. Thank you, Kaz. I appreciate that. Ultra DJ subscribed to this channel during this chat. Well, thank you for that. Kaz Graphics also says, I'm old, but wasn't Return of the Jedi... I'm old, but wasn't in Return of the Jedi we expected the Wookiees instead of the Ewoks, and the original Star Wars stormtroopers are accurate shots? Now they're just red shirts. You know what? I agree with that too. I think the Empire is portrayed as a bunch of buffoons in Jedi, and that's another problem. And you know what? To be honest, I mean, everyone loves the Emperor, but to me, he's like the Emperor from Snow White. The Witch from Snow White. This armed and fully operational battle station. I mean, it's like, dude, I wanted to see Clive Revel's Emperor from The Empire Strikes Back. If he could be turned, he was a valuable asset. And the Emperor's like, yes, yes. The original Emperor, which you can't see anymore because he's been replaced, the original Emperor in Empire Strikes Back was this thoughtful, quiet, clearly very dangerous person. And in Jedi, it's the witch from Snow White. So anyway, NPE94 says, do you think the criticisms of Kathleen Kennedy over her hiring and firing of directors and started then abandoned Star Wars projects is fair? Well, I'm a huge fan of Kathleen Kennedy. I've been a fan of hers since, heck, her first producing credit was E.T. in 1982. So she produced so much of my childhood. Or actually my young adulthood. So I'm a fan of hers. I don't think that Star Wars has been particularly well managed, but I don't think it's necessarily Kathleen Kennedy's fault. I think a lot of that has to do with Disney wanted very specific things. And we've talked about corporate interests and the IPs that they control. I don't think they're a good mix because the corporations, they need certain things from their IPs that aren't necessarily, by getting those things, it's not necessarily the best thing for storytelling. And, this has to appeal to the broadest possible amount of people. We have to make Star Wars The Force Awakens really similar to the original Star Wars so people know what it is. And there's just, their decisions are based on corporate interests first and not on stories and characters. It doesn't matter what Kevin Feige knows over at the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is what they don't seem to know over at Star Wars, or Disney doesn't understand, is, you let the filmmakers make the movies they want to make. You don't mandate, I'm sure that if there was a choice, for instance, if I was doing the Star Wars movies, Rogue One was a good choice for a Star Wars story movie. Obviously, everyone likes Rogue One. But if they had done a movie with Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi instead of a young Solo movie, I think they would have been in much better shape. Because having Ewan McGregor play Obi-Wan Kenobi, it was one of the things people like most about the prequel trilogy. Having him come back, there was a legitimacy there. But when you're doing a young Han Solo movie so soon after you've just seen old Han Solo in Force Awakens, it was kind of weird. It's just bizarre. When they could have gone a different way, they gave them more authenticity. But so I don't think it's only Kathleen Kennedy's fault, but I do think she definitely shares some of the blame. I absolutely think that. Dan V is here. Hello, Dan V. I know it's big news with Jared Leto being Joker in the Snyder Cut, which is baffling to me. Is Jared Leto the Joker in the Snyder Cut? What people aren't discussing is Amber Heard being on set. After what was revealed in court where she committed actual abuse, that's ridiculous and is a double standard. You know what, though? Here's my feelings. Like, people's personal lives, what does it have to do with their work lives? Unless you're, I don't know, a career criminal, a serial killer, or a rapist or something like that, people's marital spats, it might get physical, but I don't see how that should impact their work, And by the way, the Jared Leto, is there something I don't know? Let me see. Jared Leto, Joker, Snyder Cut. Do I not know anything about this? Did I miss this on Deadline or something? Oh, I did. Well, you learn something new every day. You know why I didn't know this? Because I've been on with I've been on the internet. Jared Leto to play Joker in Zack Snyder's Justice League exclusive. Wow, looks like Leto is getting the last laugh as he joins the shooting of additional scenes for the Snyder Cut. Jared Leto, who played the classic DC villain the Joker in 2016 Suicide Squad, has joined the additional photography shooting for the Snyder Cut, the filmmaker's definitive version of the 2017 superhero movie he was forced to exit, and he never saw through to completion. The project, officially titled Zack Snyder's Justice League, is being overseen by HBO Max, which is financing the new round of shooting and the completion of the many unfinished scenes, and will air as a 4-episode event series next year. Shooting is currently underway with Ben Affleck, Ray Fisher, and Amber Heard among those involved. On top of Leto, it's unclear which other actors are included. Even as the shoot rolls ahead, 2 producers who were involved with the theatrical movie are quietly moving to the side, John Berg and Jeff Johns, then studio executives who oversaw the film and the reshoot by Joss Whedon that was meant to salvage the failed movie. They will not be receiving producer credits on the Snyder Cut, sources say. Yeesh. You don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. It ain't show friends, it's show business. Sources close to Berg and Johns have confirmed the duo's intention to remove their names from the Snyder Cut since they did not work on this version and are no longer studio executives. Well, good for them. The sources also say the movie pays respect to Snyder's creative vision and the additional photography shoot. It is unclear when Berg's and John's siege began. One source said the move began months ago and is unconnected to comments made by Fisher, who played Cyborg in the movie and who has for months accused the two of enabling abuse and misconduct by Whedon on the set. After vocal and public outbursts on social media, even as late as September, Fisher has been less incendiary and posting less frequently. Well, somebody came to an agreement. Leto boarding the Snyder Cut is noteworthy as the character did not appear in the original 2017 movie and raises questions as to how much new content could be included in Snyder's super version of Justice League. That's a very interesting question. It also ties the new cut to Suicide Squad, the all-star DC-based movie that saw Margot Robbie break out as a fan-favorite character, Harley Quinn, and Leto portray the Joker as a love-obsessed and glittery crime lord. The picture was exec-produced by Snyder and his wife and partner, Deborah Snyder, and was meant to tie into an overall DC cinematic universe. That is very interesting. Huh. I'd have to think about that for a while. That's pretty crazy. Yeah, but I don't think it's a problem that Amber Heard's on set. I think maybe they have to bring her back because she's part of the Justice League movie, and if they needed her, it's academic. They needed to get her back. But I don't, first of all, I don't think it's a double standard. If Amber Heard was abusive, on one hand, we live in a world where everybody's equal, right? Everybody should be created and thought of. Everyone's created equal, and everybody should be thought of as equal. But call me old-fashioned. I don't think. Look, I know for a fact women can dole out abuse just like men can, but when it comes to physicality or things like that, it's different. But anyway, I don't think it's a double standard. Danny Boy. Well, Danny Boy also said, "Hey Rob, Jared Leto to play Joker in Zack Snyder's Justice League. News from Hollywood Reporter. Thoughts?" You know what? I don't know. I mean, it's some craziness. That is some craziness. I don't know how he's going to work into the Justice League plot. Maybe we're going to deal with Robin's death, and that's where I could see it. That would be really interesting, because I think that really informs Batman's character. And if it makes sense that the Jared Leto Joker would be the one to kill Robin, as opposed to, say, well, the Heath Ledger Joker or the Joaquin Phoenix Joker. I think it's interesting. You know what? I'll tell you this. If nothing else, the Justice League movie, Zack Snyder's Justice League, I think is going to be pretty interesting. I love Man of Steel, and I think the ultimate version of Batman v Superman has an interesting, almost mythic quality to it. Does it have a lot of goofy stuff in it? Well, yeah, not as goofy as, say, Return of the Jedi does, but it's got a lot of goofy stuff in it, you know? And I mean, check it out. I was going to open these up, and I think I was going to put them over here. I was going to redo my shelves. I've got my Justice League Superman, which is a cool figure because he comes with, the Superman hot toy comes with a light up. You can put a light underneath his, so you can have heat vision. It's very, very cool. Anyway, yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. Bob the Ape Man, Bob Kowal is here. I don't know if you guys have seen go to Bob Kowal, Bob Kowal. You got to go to his Facebook page, and you have to see his Infestation 2020 Halloween display at his house. If you're having a bad day, or you're feeling depressed, or you just watched Trinidad the Island Man's entry into the I swear to God, you guys should. I watched Trinidad the Island Man, who always has a smile on his face, made a very unexpected entry into the Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. It made me want to give him a hug. And I warn you, bring some hankies when you watch his movie. But anyway, but you got to go check out Bob Kowal's Infestation display. It's unbelievable. And if you want to feel happy and put a smile on your face, go to his Facebook page and check out his photographs from his Halloween. He's turned his whole house into this. It's unbelievable. You got to check it out. Rob, your thinking you might be partially responsible for QUIBI's failure is like the violinist of the string quartet on the Titanic thinking his breaking a string helped sink the ship. You're right, sir. I'm you know what, but you know, I wouldn't be the first time I've been self-aggrandizing and egomaniacal. Dan V goes on and says, "It makes it even stranger to me since Ray Fisher has been very outspoken, but is now working with someone on the set who has admitted abuse while doing and saying nothing about it. He's having it both ways." Well, listen. I mean, again, I think that being on a movie set and feeling you've been abused is different than people who are in a relationship abusing one another. I mean, I don't think it's the same thing. I don't think all abuse falls under the same. It's a different thing. And you know, if there's one truism I've learned in my life, it is this. Here's truth. I'm going to drop some truth on you. Nobody can ever understand what really goes on in the relationship between two people other than the two people that are in the relationship. They're the only ones that really know. So I tend to try and stay out of those things. Atticatch Sound sends in a super chat and says, Katzenberg is quitting QUIBI to invest in the Optograb. Probably. Where's he going to go now? I mean, what happens when you blow $1.7 billion, $5 billion? You know what? I'd kind of like to know the answer to that. I'd like to know it firsthand, actually. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't. John Ide subscribed to the channel. Thank you, John Ide. Alexander Wilson's here. Hello, sir. After watching the original Star Wars and then the JJ trilogy, every item in the original felt organic. But in JJ's trilogy, everything felt forced and shoehorned. The return of Palpatine was executed poorly, And he was so over the top. It was disappointing. Yeah, it was disappointing. JS sends in a tip and says, for pizza only. Well, one of my favorite pizzas I've ever had is at the Pasadena Pizza Company, which is down the street. And their meat lovers pizza is to die for. So thanks for that, man. Appreciate it. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, I did not. Did I finish this letter? Tom Badiscum. Let me go back to this. Rob, it's sad to me how many films studios are forced to send to pay-per-view. I've been thinking about studios' approach to financing their films after the pandemic is behind us. I have thought for several years that with the rise of streaming services with the likes of Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, and now Disney Plus, it was inevitable that both studios and cinemas would have to adapt. Some of my favorite films came from the 80s, with the directors who were forced to work with limited budgets, but this also made them become more imaginative when the money started to run out. George Lucas used some clever ways to create sound effects for Star Wars, and they are held as some of the greatest films of all time. Members of the Nightmare on Elm Street team have said how limited the budgets were. Studios may be forced to return to such budgets in the future. I personally would rather have great stories even at the expense of top-class visual effects. Some of the top directors have been using $200 million budgets. How do you feel directors will cope with the transition? Tom Badiscum. Tom, great question. I think the only way that they can is to do exactly what you suggest. I think the problem now is we have the tools to literally do anything. And when you have the tools to literally do anything, you'll do anything. And I think the budgets of these movies, look at how many people work on them. How many effects houses all over the world. Do they really need those effects? I mean, you know, the best way to use visual effects is to employ them properly. You don't need all the visual effects in the world. You need the best visual effects to tell your story and to convey what it is you hope to convey. Shot after shot after shot. And a lot of times, like the Marvel movies, almost every shot is a special effect because there's green screen compositing or something's going on. Iron Man, even in a scene where Iron Man's walking around, Tony Stark's on set, and you have Robert Downey Jr. Well, I guess he's not going to be walking around anymore. Unless they bring him back from the dead. But his suit was frequently all CG. So every shot with Iron Man became an effect shot. I think some of that thing is going to go away. I think they're going to come back to actual practical stuff, or they're going to use the stagecraft technology that we've seen used on The Mandalorian. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff that's going to happen. Yeah. Let's see. Where am I? Here's this. Emma writes in. Emma Bannon writes in. She says, "Oh, hi, Rob, and all fellow imagination connoisseurs. I thought that I'd write to you about something that no one ever talks about. A subject that is in no way controversial or possibly offensive to anyone. But then I thought, nah, I'll write about Star Trek Discovery instead. So I guess, spoilers ahead. Star Trek Discovery, how do I loathe thee? Let me count the ways." That's a great opening line, isn't it? Sounds very intellectual and impressive, only I didn't write it. I stole it off some girl called Elizabeth Barrett Browning. It didn't quite fit with what I wanted to say, so I changed a few words, and bingo! Yeah, okay, it now means the exact opposite of its original meaning, but who cares? Just send me the Pulitzer and the Post. Kerching! That's exactly the feeling I get from watching Discovery. That they wanted a sci-fi property, preferably with brand recognition, but Star Trek didn't quite do what they wanted, so they changed a few things and made it relevant, edgy, relatable, and any other words that they could remember from Dick and Jane's book of television production. It didn't matter that it fundamentally changed what Star Trek was about, that we as humanity would outgrow our differences, that we would move beyond the greed and the lust for power that seems to be the cause of so much conflict in our history, and explore a galaxy full of strange new worlds, seeking to understand rather than destroy or grab for power's sake. It didn't matter because it was cool, had moody lighting, lots of arguing, and amazing special effects. Kind of like putting glitter on vomit and calling it a rainbow. Discovery's first 2 seasons were bad. I mean, really bad. You know, like buying a tub of Ben & Jerry's because you fancied some ice cream only to discover that instead of the chocolate fudge flavor you were expecting, it's a new flavor with horse dung and actual chunks of tarmac? Wow. Still, much like Jason Statham's hopes of winning an Oscar, hope springs eternal. So when season 3 rolled around, I crossed my fingers and hit play. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. And may I add, oh dear. It was bad. I mean, really bad. I quite understand that there will be those that love Discovery, and if anyone does, then of course that's great, especially if it leads them to Star Trek, TNG, and DS9. But this opening episode was literally painful to watch. In fairness, it might not have helped that I watched it sandwiched between Court Martial and Return to the Archons. My kind of girl. Sonequa Martin Green gave what I would call a unique performance. I think someone must have told her to be more upbeat because she plays Burnham as deliriously happy in entirely inappropriate moments. When she crashes on the planet and finds out there are multiple life forms on it, she screams with joy, as if she's just won the lottery at the same time as stepping on Lego, without knowing anything about those life forms and the safety of the planet. Burnham also sends her magic flying suit right into the sun. I'm sure that will void the warranty for no conceivable reason. How does she know that she'll never need to use it again? Oh, and when she's drugged, her drunk act makes The Way to Eden seem like Shakespearean masterpiece. Oh, and her Sherlock Holmes moment when Book was cloaking his ship, she came up with the brilliant deduction, you don't want anyone else to find it. Starfleet's finest. The whole basis of the plot is that an incident called the burn caused the vast majority of dilithium suddenly explode, much like my brain trying to make sense of this madness. Thus, Starfleet is ground to a halt as none of their ships can travel at warp speed. So apparently all their subspace communications also went offline? Maybe they didn't pay their cable bill. All the hundreds of Federation member planets also lost communication and starship capabilities in the 930 years since Discovery's time and the 150 years since the burn. Not one single scientist or engineer had come up with an alternative, except that maybe other races used warp-capable ships that were not based on dilithium. Now, there could be some big explanation as to why all this happened in future episodes, but the foundation that it is built on shows the writer's ignorance of both Star Trek history and how this universe works. I can understand that the producers might want to shake things up, but if they're going to do that, they have to be consistent with the established rules of what's gone before. Anything else is lazy and poor writing. There are many other things that irked me. The character had waited 40 years for someone to turn up. Nicely played, but I really wanted to say to him, mate, you need to get out more. Take a holiday. Go for a walk. Join a club of some kind. I know. It's like, did you stay on that for 40 years? You didn't go out and do anything? And to the fan service moments that were as subtle as a sledgehammer to the head, which on reflection might have been preferable. Well, sorry, Rob, for going out about STD. Yep. STD. That's the perfect abbreviation for Discovery. Wink, wink. Seriously, though, for those who enjoy the show, I'm genuinely happy that you found something you find engaging. That you're entertained and it brings you joy. As for me, I'm off to find a sledgehammer. Take care, Rob. Take care, everyone. Live long and prosper. That comes from Emma Bannon. That was very nice, Emma. Or some would say, savage. But you're all absolutely right. Desmond writes in. This is just Desmond. Hi, Toy Man. Hope you and your team are well. I'm curious to understand the process of how independent and or movie studios get funded with some of the details of banking, loans, and the bank interests, loan periods, and stuff, approximately. What is the usual time period for green lighting funding? Oh, green lighting. Okay. I was thinking green. Okay. What is the usual time period for green lighting funding? Well, that's an interesting question. Time period, it's a little vague. Like, how long does it take you to find? If somebody's already agreed to finance your film project, I guess whenever you take the money, it starts ticking, and it's different for everyone. I mean, it depends. I mean, it depends what your deal is. You figure that, especially for an independent movie, I mean, I would want to take at least have some kind of a 24-month loan. and figure that you're going to take 2 years or maybe a 36-month loan. So you figure that you'll make the movie and get it done in 2 years, and then you'll get it out and you'll start hopefully seeing a return in that third year at some point, and then you can start paying back the loan without huge interest charges or something. It depends. I mean, it really depends how your deal is structured. It depends how many, you might have other financing entities. There's a million different ways to do it. What is the usual time period of loan paybacks to funders, banks, and private investors? I mean, again, I would tend to say between 2 and 3 years. That's what I would shoot for if I was borrowing money to get it paid back in by the end of year 3, because you've got to give yourself time to make the movie and then get it out there so you can cash flow it back. Hopefully, you can do it sooner. I usually my goal is to return 30% to my investors. So that means if you borrow $100, you give them back $130. I mean, that would be the plan. So they're making, 30% on their money. But if you can do it quickly, like for instance, if I could get the Free Enterprise 4K project financed, I mean, I think to do it the way I want to do it, to put Free Enterprise on 4K to remaster the whole movie, it would cost like $300,000 total. But I know that I can turn some of that around immediately, because once I had the money to do it, then I could take pre-orders for the 4K discs, and hopefully I could return that person's money back in the case of doing that within 6 to 12 months. That would be the plan. That would be what I'd try to do. But you pay back to funders like within 3 years, you hope. Are there specific banks or fund organizations that just deal with the entertainment business? There are specific banks that just deal with the entertainment business. Mostly they're credit unions and things like that, but there are a few. Are there specific banks? That's it. What's some of the common structures of payments to studios versus IP creators versus distribution outlets? Ooh, that's a tough question. Well, see, normally, for instance, it's a really complex question. Like if you, gosh, how do I even begin? If you are somebody, like if I'm the writer-director of a project, okay? And like this current project that I'm developing now that I want to make into a feature film. If somebody decides to green light the movie, you could spend I'll give you an example. Not the movie I'm working on now, but the Hills Run Red. When they told us that we were going to make The Hills Run Red, it was then a year before we actually made it. So during that period of time, we got nothing. We got no money at all. And then when we were making the movie, it was a step deal. Like I think I was paid. I had 3 different payments. Like I got paid an initial payment, then I got paid on the kickoff of principal photography. I have to get my deal, and then I was paid upon delivery of the film after we shot it, and then I think I was paid at the end 4 times. I was paid at the end of post-production, so I got paid through the course of making the film. But then you get like quarterly statements or monies, depending. I mean, it really depends. And when you ask studios versus IP creators, I mean, you got to get a good deal, because the thing is, when you're making something with a studio, there's no guarantee that it's going to be a hit. So you don't know. I mean, you can set up payments, but you don't know when they're going to come in. I mean, and waiting for studios to pay you. If there's any company, if there's any business that will take you, that will shine you on for your money, it's studios. Like when I worked on DVD projects, you invoice them, and it's net 90. So once you send them an invoice, it could be up to 90 days to get your money. The most I was ever owed when I worked for 20th Century Fox, X-Men 2, we finished the special edition Blu-ray, the special edition DVD. There were no Blu-rays yet, although it is out on Blu-ray now. And we turned the disc in. The disc was already getting reviewed before we got paid. It took me 107 days from the time I submitted my invoice to the time I got paid, and that was for half the budget. So we're talking deep into the 5 figures, and that was was a pain in the ass. But all of these questions, there's a million ways to do it, so it's hard to answer anything. I'd have to give you like a scenario, but that's an interesting question. I should look that up and maybe do that for a show one day. I think that would be interesting to explain all of this. So yeah. Donnie Pearson is here. Hello, Rob and my fellow imagination connoisseurs. I have read a Deadline article about John Entwistle helming new film and television adaptation. Oh, this came okay. I've read a Deadline article about Jonathan Entwistle helming a new film and television adaptation of Power Rangers from Hasbro's E1. Although the upcoming movie reboot was originally being distributed by Paramount Pictures. As a longtime Power Rangers fan, I hope his role as the next showrunner of the Power Rangers universe would be as more phenomenal as, say, Alex Kurtzman's role as a showrunner of the Star Trek universe. No offense to the naysayers who were like, Jonathan Entwistle is going to ruin the Power Rangers the way Alex Kurtzman is ruining Star Trek. You don't have to be a Power Rangers fan or a Super Sentai fan to let me know what you and everyone else think. Thanks, and may the power protect you all. Regards, Donnie. Listen, we were talking about this on the John Campea show today. I don't have much faith, to be honest, that the Power Rangers could work as that kind of a franchise. The last Power Rangers movie, which I did, like John, thought was pretty good, didn't perform very well. And I just think that the Power Rangers is something that, it's a universe that's been supplanted. I don't know if there's any place for it now. You know, kids have the MCU. Are they still going to love Power Rangers? And I don't know. Maybe they will. I mean, I think that it breaks my axiom. I think that, once again, you're putting your universe before your characters and your story. What I would like to see is, I'd love to see a great Power Rangers movie and have that concept work and then see what they can do with it. Yeah. So, yes. I don't know. I'm curious. This letter comes from Red Walrus. I've been a fan of yours since Sci-Fi Universe. Wow. Sci-Fi Universe. In the short story competition, can pop culture IPs be mentioned? This is a very good question. Okay. So Red Walrus has a great question. So for those of you who don't know, after the film festival is over, we are doing a 3-pronged contest. We are going to publish an anthology of short fiction that is going to be written by you imagination connoisseurs. The book itself is called The Imagination Connoisseurs. And that is, therein lies, I mean, you're going to tell me, what does that mean to you? The Imagination Connoisseurs. Like Bret Easton Ellison's book, The Informers, which is a collection of short stories. The Imagination Connoisseurs. What does it mean to be an imagination connoisseur? Is it, I don't know. You know, you tell me. I don't want to limit your imaginations. And it can be all kinds of stories, anything. I don't want to limit you. The stories must be between 5,000 and 10,000 words. And we are going to pick the winners. I really haven't decided yet if we're going to pick one winner. You know, I don't know if we're going to pick a winner. Because I think all of the stories that we are going to put in the... and by the way, the stories that we're going to choose for this anthology, I think they should all be equal. I don't think that we should say one story is the best of the anthology. I don't think that would necessarily be right. Although I could be wrong. Maybe we should give out awards. But I think just being picked for the anthology is award enough. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a nice hardcover book. So the stories, you can start on your story now, but they're going to be due Valentine's Day of 2021. So February 14th. We're also holding a contest to create the cover of the book, which will end up being a wraparound cover. And I promise you, by the 2nd of December, I'll actually send you a template. I'm actually going to get a template. I'll figure out what size the book is going to be, but I'll get a cover template that call a publisher and get it. So you'll be able to design the cover for the Imagination Connoisseurs. And I leave that up to you, whatever that cover is. But that's a contest that we will vote on, like the poster contest, publicly. And then one of the stories that's in the anthology, I'll direct it, but I'll probably work with the writer of the story, not probably, I will, to adapt that story into screenplay form. And between March 1st and May 15th of this year, we will make the movie. And the making of the movie will be a big part of this show. And we will take all of you imagination connoisseurs through the making of the film. If you want to become a member of the channel, part of the reason that we have memberships, I mean, you couldn't have memberships to this channel. Memberships on YouTube is kind of like Patreon, but you can become a member for 99 cents a month if you want. And once we get up to 50 of the higher tiered members, we're going to start doing sometimes daily chats, extra chats in addition to these. But also, if you're just a member, even at 99 cents a month, all of those costs are going to help us do more of these things. And what I want to do is on this show, I want to show like broadcasting live from the set of the Imagination Connoisseurs, or whatever the story is that we're going to call it. And also, if we get good stories and we can find the financing, who's to say we won't make 10 of the stories in the anthology? Why make one when you can have 10 at 10 times the price? Want to take a ride? I mean, wouldn't that be cool? And if we could find financing, I mean, that's what I want to do with the channel, is I would like to make, my dream, Ray Kinsella, my dream would be to make original programming that is generated by this community. And when I say that, I mean, the dream would be is we all participate financially. You know, it's not like I'm going to make stuff. No, I mean, I would like to be able to make stuff from you guys, and we all participate together. That would be the dream. And that's what I'm interested in, because even if we couldn't, like, imagine if we could take these short stories and turn them into a viable series, and we could sell the series somewhere. If the stories, see, the real problem that I see, and this is not a put down in any way, shape, or form, but when I was reading screenplays for a living, 1 out of every 100 screenplays would be worth reading or even making into a movie. I would assume, and I hope everybody proves me wrong, but I would assume that that's going to be the case. I mean, we're watching YouTube. It's not like anybody's BL Alley, I know, has written books, and but I don't know if anybody else has any writing talent, and that's a tough thing. But what I would like to do is like the Imagination Connoisseurs should be a 10-episode anthology. I mean, that's what I would like to do. I think that would be really cool. All I can promise is we'll make one movie and see how it goes. And obviously that one movie is going to have to be cost effective, and we'll see how it all goes down. But anyway, that's the story. So from December 2nd to December 31st is the contest to design the book cover. What do you win? I want to have some kind of a cash prize for that as well. But then you'll also, you've created the book cover. And then the 15th is the day of, the 14th of February is the day that all the short stories are due. And then starting from March 1st onward, we will make a film. We'll make a short of the one of the stories that's going to be in the book. And what'll be cool about that is I'm going to launch them all on the same day. So, like, in terms of the finished book is going to be available on May 15th. This is my plan. I'm hoping it could all work out. So when the movie is going to premiere, you'll be able to buy the book. But the people that are in the book obviously get copies of the book. But yeah, it'll all work synergistically together. And then maybe, hopefully, if it goes well, maybe we can make 10 episodes of the Imagination Connoisseurs. I think that'd be cool. Anyway, so Red Walrus says, been a fan since Sci-Fi Universe. That's 25 years, man. Thank you very much. In the short story competition, can pop culture IPs be mentioned, such as Star Wars, Jaws, and Blade Runner, or will there be trouble with clearances to get permission, or is even permission needed? There is a page yet up for the rules. There is not. Great idea, by the way. I hope the book and film festival are annual competitions. Thanks. Well, I would too. You can write anything you want in the pages of a book. That's why Ernie Cline got away with writing Ready Player One. For the most part. You can pretty much mention any pop culture franchise that you want, because you're not showing it. You're just talking about it. So, yeah. Write what you want. And if there is some kind of a problem, our lawyers will tell us and be like, you can't say that. I'll be like, okay. This one comes from Jay Canada. Jay Canada says, "Hey Rob, loving all the horror movie reviews this time of year that Elizabeth and you are doing. So much fun. However, this letter is about the new show Ratched. One of the greatest movies of all time is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, as you know. The performances, the realism, the writing, the acting, everything is perfect, including the performance of Louise Fletcher. Though I've only watched the first 3 episodes, this new show about a young Nurse Ratched is so stylized and the backstory of her character is so sensationalized it seems way off track with what we saw in the movie. It's a fantastic meal just having a bunch of sugar and sauce dumped all over it. I can appreciate the style and desire to bring the character to light, and I don't know what the backstory of the character was before this show, but to me the character's motivations seem to be that of an uptight person of authority and ego who believes in treatment and the system of the time with frustration and wear from her day-to-day job. I agree. Not this psychopathic backstory. All these people are eating the show up and it totally undermines everything about the movie and its characters. What do you think, Rob? Have you watched this show yet? Jay Canada. I have not, Jay, but it was apparent to me from the trailers that that's what they were doing. And I agree with you. Nurse Ratched was a by-the-book medical practitioner. And she worked in a mental ward. And what ends up happening is a man comes in who probably, R.P. McMurphy probably shouldn't be there. And she winds up in a battle of wills with him. I don't think she's necessarily a bad woman. She's not mistreating her patients when the movie starts. She's mistreating Jack Nicholson, R.P. McMurphy, because he's this free spirit and goes against her way of doing things. And I think that's kind of crazy. That they've made her a psychopath. It looked like she was a horror film character, and I didn't really quite understand. Yeah. So anyway, I want to watch Ratched though. Let's see. Alexander Wilson sends in a tip and says. Let me get back here. It says, Rob, you say Return of the Jedi was goofy, but a lot of kids who didn't grow up with fathers cried and got emotional when Vader saved Luke. Look, I love that scene. That's my favorite. The beginning and the end of the movie are what I liked. Listening to an NFL podcast and hearing all these athletes talked about how they cried in Return of the Jedi, it was very eye-opening. Sure, it was NFL athletes you were listening to. They're the ones talking about who cried during Return of the Jedi. Come on, man. I know what you're doing there. Fernando Barrero became a member of the channel. Well, thank you, Fernando Barrero. Thanks for becoming a member. As I said, the memberships and all that will help us do these things that we want to do. So we'll give your money back to the community somehow. Donnie Boy sending a super chat. Donnie Boy. Rob, I also have Henry Cavill's Superman hot toy. I can only dream about the black suit version at $2,200. Well, you could just buy another one and spray paint it. Ross Gecko says, I saw your late night video from the Robservatory. Why not hire a TaskRabbit cheap for 2 to 3 days to assist you? It'd give you a quantum leap. I can't, though, because I have all my collectibles and stuff. I like to piddle around here, and I'm alphabetizing everything. I'd like to. There's just so much crap in here. I mean, when I say crap, I mean crap boxes full of stuff. I'm like, I can't throw this away. So, but I do appreciate you saying so. Yes, I was here last night, late night in the Robservatory, and I made a video more out of frustration or to keep me awake than anything else. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, kind souls, gentle beings from across the 28 known galaxies, I am putting an end. I must stop talking on the internet today. Stop talking. I must stop talking. By the way, our Halloween week goes on. We are not doing a Halloween show tonight. We're doing it on Thursday. We're doing The Witch, and we're doing Cronenberg's The Fly on Saturday. We've been having a lot of fun with these horror versions. We had a raucous time doing Friday the 13th last night. It was hilarious. So, yeah. And then we move into the home stretch, working our way up to The Exorcist. So we shall see. It should be a fun time. Was had by all. But anyway, I want to thank my moderating staff. I want to thank Mike Bodden. I want to thank Greg Smith. I want to thank the Richard. And of course, you can always find the Richard throwing watch parties, and some kind of shenanigans are always going on the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page. So go check that out. I want to thank Robert Pariso. I want to thank Bunyan Snipe all the way from the UK. Let's see who else is here. MC Blackcap is here. Hello, MC Blackcap. Yeah, I think that's everybody. And look at, there's some people that have become like members. Black Philip Alvarez, great letters, by the way, for the horror movies. Add a catch sound. My title would have been Stories to Tell. You know what? That's a pretty good title, Stories to Tell. But you know what? I want something, Stories to Tell. You'd have to have watched this show. Like, everyone has a story to tell. That's kind of what we've been doing, the branding for the film festival. And I think the Imagination Connoisseurs is more. It's more of a fun title. Stories to Tell is a little generic, but I do like that idea. Maybe we can call it the Imagination Connoisseurs and then ... Stories to Tell. I like that. Maybe we'll use that. It's pretty good. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for supporting the channel, becoming members or tipping and super chatting and all that. Very much appreciated. And we're going to put it all to good use because we have posters to print and we have to make trophies and all that kind of thing. So it should be fun. And by the way, there's going to be more premieres this week for the, we had our own Trinidad the Island Man's movie. I told you, it'll make you sad. Throwing in the towel, man. When I watched this movie, I was like, when it was over, I'm like, oh my God, Trinidad, are you okay? You know, I hope so. I hope he's okay. But, yeah. But check it out. And then we've got more coming this week. And also Blood Brothers, which is pretty interesting. That's an official selection. John Ortiz sends in a tip and said, I once heard that to make a faithful adaptation of Naked Lunch, it would take $400 million and be banned in every country in the world. The IMDb page says the estimated budget was $16 million and the world gross was $2.6 million. I wonder why. Well, you know, I don't know what to say. I love Naked Lunch, but it's not exactly the kind of movie that is a 4-quadrant film and fun for the whole family. So there you go. Phage Lives sends in a super chat and says, why don't you use Kickstarter to get your dream of media off the ground? Well, in the case of Free Enterprise, I don't own Free Enterprise. The executive producer owns Free Enterprise, the man who paid for it. And I, in order to, you know, I could probably call him up, but and ask him. But it's too much money. Making $300,000 on Kickstarter is tough these days, and I wouldn't want to do it unless I knew I could make it happen. But yeah, maybe I should call him up. Like, why not? But there's just hard costs associated that if I got $150,000, I couldn't do it anyway. You know, it'd be a pain in the ass. But we shall see. We shall see. Not a bad idea. But, you know, crowdfunding, it's tough. So, what was I saying? Yes, it's time for me to go. It's time for me to stop talking on the internet. I've been talking on the internet for a long time today. And in all honesty, I know that I laughed a lot about the QUIBI business, but and I probably shouldn't. But you know, what can I say? It was not surprising to me, and I just what a monumental waste of time and money that whole idea was. It could have been how many movies could have been made? I mean, if you made movies for $20 million, you could have made how many movies with that $1.75 billion? You know, they could have been on Netflix. You could have gone to Netflix as Jeffrey Katzenberg, and you could have said, hey, I've raised, well, I know maybe you couldn't have raised that much money because it would have been a different thing that they were raising money for, but what a bummer. But anyway, what I was going to say, what was I going to say? I was going to say goodbye. I was going to say, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And tomorrow, I am not on the John Campea show, so I can sleep in. And the That'll be fine. And another episode of Star Trek Discovery will be available tomorrow at midnight. And The Mandalorian is coming. All right, kids, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, kind souls, gentle beings from across the 28 known galaxies. As always, as I say, have a better day. Have a better day.